The screaming started underwater, a sound like bones shattering at the ocean's floor. If there was a place in the world that held secrets, it was the ocean, and I was Leon, known as the diver. My mission was to rescue the drowned and recover bodies from the deep sea. But on that day, I was the one who needed saving. It was a typical afternoon when my phone rang. The caller was my colleague, Mark. He told me about a capsized fishing boat, and I immediately prepared myself to dive. Arriving at the scene, I saw ambulances, police, weeping families, and rescue teams frantically working. Amidst the cries of pain and the few cheers of survival, I joined Mark, some other divers, and we boarded a small rescue launch heading to the sinking site. As the boat moved away, I could see the workers struggling to save the people in the water. When I finally reached the sight before me was surreal. The waves were abnormally still. I stopped for a moment, observing the unsettling silence before descending into the depths. At 40 feet, the world changes. The noise above fades away. Bubbles from my oxygen tank were the only sound. Suddenly, I saw a flash of white amidst the blue, a headstone lying on the seabed. As I approached, I realized it was a coffin. But how did a coffin end up at the bottom of the ocean? I couldn't fathom the idea of someone being buried at sea. And it wasn't a recent burial. Marine life had already begun to colonize the coffin. I continued my search. As I reached a depth of 60 feet, the absolute silence was broken only by the sound of oxygen bubbles escaping my helmet. I dove deeper, entering a realm of perpetual twilight. My headlamp illuminated the ruins of the ship, but I didn't find anyone. I swam past the scattered cargo, twisted metal and shattered glass, all remnants of the doomed vessel. The water around me was murky, filled with debris and dancing algae. I pushed forward, desperate to find someone alive. But then I spotted something odd amidst the wreckage, an old diving mask. It was unlike any mask I had seen before, a special and mysterious kind. Curiosity got the better of me, and I pulled it out of the water. The moment I placed it over my face, everything changed. Visibility became terrifyingly clear, as if I could see beyond the shadows. I removed my old mask and put on the strange one. On the side of the mask, I noticed a worn engraving, a woman holding a child, and beneath it, a single Greek word, nemesis, vengeance. I didn't know why my hand suddenly trembled. Then I saw her, a woman with long black hair waving like the arms of a giant squid. Her eyes were completely empty, devoid of pupils. She was floating in the water. Suddenly her head turned at an unnatural angle and her eyes opened. They weren't human eyes, but black voids with tiny red stars swimming within them. She opened her mouth but made no sound. I was paralyzed with fear. Before I could escape, I heard a sound like the whistling of wind echoing in my helmet. You, who took her? I didn't understand what she meant. But when I looked at my hand, I saw the strange mask clinging to my skin, as if alive. I surfaced in a panic, screaming about the woman underwater, but Mark and my colleagues tried to calm me, believing it was oxygen deprivation. I knew they wouldn't believe me. Returning home, I looked at the mask in my hands. It was just a diving mask. Or was it? What had I seen down there? Was it real, or figment of my imagination? To find answers, I decided to visit the enigmatic Dr. Alistair Cross. Mark, however, warned me that 6 diving teams had vanished after discovering the mask, and urged me to abandon it. Desperate to understand what was happening to me, I pressed on. I found Dr. Alistair Cross's contact information and reached out to him. He directed me to the Oracle Caleb, but I insisted on speaking to Isaac Thorne instead, as I believed he would be quicker to help. Thorne, as I later learned, had a dark history with Dr. Cross, as they had both attempted to open a portal to another realm, but the attempt had failed catastrophically. When I met Isaac Thorne, he explained that the mask was a gateway to a realm of eternal torment, created by an ancient cult to sacrifice to the sea. The mask, Thorne said, flipping through the pages of an old book, is not merely a tool, but a focal point of power. Nemesis is not just a legend. She is a vengeful spirit who chooses her victims from those with ancestral sins. She will torment you and drag you to your hellish realm. I explained what I had experienced with the mask, and he confirmed my fears, advising me to destroy it. Isaac Thorne led me to an empty room with a red circle drawn on the floor. We performed a ritual to burn the mask. Thorne took a drop of my blood on a dagger and on the mask, then wrapped the mask with a red thread tied with 7 knots. He began chanting mysterious incantations, and the room's energy shifted, becoming heavy with anticipation. The doors and windows violently burst open and slammed shut. The air was sucked from the room, and immense pressure built up in my ears. Blood trickled from them. I saw black phantoms moving everywhere, and I heard screams and whispers. At the climax, Thorne threw the mask and the thread into a pile of fire. Red flames shot out from it. A foul smell arose before it turned to ash. "There, it's done," Thorne said, before bidding me farewell. That night, the nightmares began. I dreamt I was buried alive in a narrow, dark tomb. I heard a continuous creaking sound, and when I shined my phone's flashlight, I saw a monstrous figure with a decaying face holding a child with black hair and bulging eyes. "You saw what happened, Diver," the monster shrieked, then transformed into a goat with massive horns and began violently ramming the walls. The walls turned into water, and grotesque creatures emerged from it, swirling around me. Then everything fell silent, and the goat screamed again, "Remember, remember." A shadow identical to me appeared, laughing joyfully, and extended a fiery hand to whisper in my ear, "Do you see me, Diver?" I woke up to find a red string tied around my wrist, exactly like those used by sorcerers in their rituals. The next day at the coffee shop, when I told Mark about the dream, he turned pale. "Do you remember that incident 2 years ago, when a diving team disappeared north of the island? They said it was an accident, but we know the truth. They also found masks. The 6 previous teams who found it. They all vanished," he said. "You know, Leon," Mark continued, "in many cultures, water never forgives. It holds on to its secrets, and sometimes those who dare to invade its world pay the price." Desperate, I went to Isaac Thorne, who advised me to destroy the mask, but he also warned me that doing so might unleash the very thing the mask held at bay. Torn between the fear of the mask's power and the growing darkness within me, I decided to seek out Dr. Alistair Cross. I contacted him, and he directed me to the Oracle Caleb, but I insisted on meeting Isaac Thorne instead, believing he would be quicker to find a solution. Thorne, as I later learned, had a dark history with Dr. Cross, as they had both attempted to open a portal to another realm, but the attempt had failed catastrophically. When I met Isaac Thorne, he explained that the mask was a gateway to a realm of eternal torment, created by an ancient cult to sacrifice to the sea. "The mask," Thorne said, flipping through the pages of an old book, "is not merely a tool, but a focal point of power. Nemesis is not just a legend. She is a vengeful spirit who chooses her victims from those with ancestral sins. She will torment you and drag you to your hellish realm. I explained what I had experienced with the mask, and he confirmed my fears, advising me to destroy it. Isaac Thorne led me to an empty room with a red circle drawn on the floor. We performed a new ritual. He placed his hand on my head and began chanting painful incantations. I saw demonic entities appearing and disappearing, and the creature I saw in the tomb stood behind Caleb with eyes burning with anger. Caleb smiled and said, "A curse upon the deceptive. No welcome for the manipulative and their cursed lineage." The creature let out a deafening scream. Then everything vanished after the ritual ended. I felt as if I was returning from distant depths, and air filled my lungs again. Everything you saw